Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
After the wait between rounds 1 and 2 of nearly a month, we return here from the Red Bull Ring for round 2 of the RacingLab Summer GT3 Cup, live and exclusive on Apex Racing TV. And of course, Austria's premier circuit. It's lived through a number of periods of decline, but once again appears to be on the ascendancy as the host of the country's Formula 1 round. Of course, now under the ownership of Red Bull, the circuit's gone through various iterations, being known as the A1 Ring from 96 to 2004, and in its original form, the Österreich Ring from 1969 all the way up until 1995. But today, we get to experience the GT3s of the RacingLab Summer GT3 Cup. Take you to the track of what's going to be some absolutely epic action, I'm sure. I'm Tim Cox. We've got Lewis Ward in the virtual production trailer, but right now I'm joined by Seb Bosher-Williams. Seb, Red Bull Ring, it's a little bit of a tricky one for its off-track limits. Now, the drivers, I think, you know, with the amount of laps that they're going to be putting in across the hour-long race we're going to have here today, I think this could be a little bit of a war of attrition of who can keep it between the white lines and not incur too many off-track penalties and therefore a drive-through.
I think you make a really good point. Of course, we saw it when Formula 1 headed to the circuit. Was it 2 weeks ago now? It was a massive controversy, and also in the Formula 2 and Formula 3 series as well. So it is really difficult to keep yourself within the track limits there. It's a function of the track itself. It's such a short track. Every little half a tenth really matters because there's not a lot of lap time around here. So you really have to extend all of the track limits. You've got to be adventurous. And yeah, I think you're right. I think that's going to be a real reoccurring theme over today's race, is about making sure that you stay within the white lines and also you don't get involved in too much door banging action. We saw, you know, a lot of really close racing at Monza, and if you start to do that around here, it's so easy to pick up a few 4Xs and you are well on your way to getting yourself a drive-through penalty, or maybe even worse. But got some cars out on the track as we start our first qualifying laps, and it's nice to see an Audi out on tracks. The Team Happy Life Factory Esports Audi. I don't think we really saw too many at Monza, Tim. I think there's only one or two. So, yeah, it's always nice to see some different manufacturers on the grid.
It is indeed. It always helps us as commentators as well to have a nice variety in there, and just makes it a bit easier for, you know, doing us a favour and helping us pick everyone out. And I covered a race recently on Apex Racing TV, obviously in preparation for the Spa 24, and the field was well dominated by the new Mercedes GT AMG GT3 Evo, which you can see on your screen right now. There's Odin Moravang heading down into Slosh Gold, that tight right-hander, which a little bit deceptive, a little bit tricky the way it just tightens up on corner exit before opening up once again. And we head down into the double left-handers there of Roush and Worth, hooking that one up, and gonna be Moravang's gonna be of RPC Esports. It's gonna be the first driver across the line to set the initial pace. Actually, no, apologies, will be slightly beaten by Team Happy Lives Loxon. And we're going to see what sort of times are going to go in. Of course, closed qualifying sessions, so the drivers have the track all to themselves. Such as the magic of sim racing, the ability to be able to do that. So there you go, Loxon in the Audi. 131.7, instantly beaten by Steinbraten, 129.0. Cracking lap from him, Moravang. The other Mercedes, 129.36. That's your provisional front row for now. Helvik in the Ferrari 488. Just 8/10 of a second off the pace, and I'm saving the groundskeepers a bit of work there with mowing the grass a little. He's heading up to turn 3 officially. Of course, just headed through turn 2 there, the kink. Obviously classified as turn 2 due to the motorbikes that come here, namely MotoGP being the premier motorbike series that visits here. They have to take it as a corner, and that's why it's classified as it was. The tight right-hander is Remus, and so Helvig. It's not just me, Sam, is it? It's really, so Seb, even just really mowing the grass.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's sort of I think that's a tyre warming technique. If you're sort of new to the pro echelons of iRacing, you do gain a little bit of an advantage by running your tyres onto the grass. It's generally frowned upon in certain leagues. There's a league that I commentate on a Sunday, a Formula 3 league that's on Apex Racing TV, and they have very strict rules against this, but it does give you a few tenths, and yeah, Helvik really trying to eke out as much performance as he can at the moment. He's currently 0.8 of a second off Steinbraten in the lead, so he needs as much of an advantage and much of an extra little bit of performance that he can get, because he needs to find almost a second of lap time. And around here, as I was alluding to earlier, it's so difficult into turn 1. Again, so easy to get an off track. You have to arrest the slide over the curb, on the exit of turn 1. And you were saying, Tim, that this technically is turn 2 because of the motorbikes, but we're not in motorbikes. Can't this just be turn 2 for simplicity's sake? And anyway, MotoGP have now added a chicane after the horrendous accident that we saw at turn 3, or the official turn 3. So hopefully, maybe in a few months' time, when the MotoGP circuit is here, that could become turn 2, because that would be really, really good for us commentators.
It's also because some of the circuits go as well. Of course, the hairpin that you have is to the Laguna Seca. A lot of people classify that as turn 1. In fact, actually, that is turn 2, because you come across the start-finish line, across the brow of the hill, the track sort of merges to the left. Again, you have exactly the same situation there as Slumboard with Helvik in the Ferrari, currently 3rd. Going great guns, trying to improve in qualifying to move himself up onto the front row. It's onto the brakes, into right. And after Jochen right in that corner, or the Red Bull Mobile corner, the final turn. Can't think where you got the name sponsorship for that one from, but across the line. Well, it's an improvement in time, 129.3, but only good enough to remain in 3rd. And in fact, 0.02 of a second short of moving up onto the front row of the grid as Steinbraten, wow, goes quicker again. What a lap. 0.4 quicker, 128.668. Standing stuff there from the Urano Esports Mercedes driver. I mean, that is about head and shoulders above the rest of the pack. Seb. Absolutely phenomenal lap from him.
Phenomenal lap, and what's even more impressive is that he did his first flying lap and he instantly sort of went to the pits. We saw a quick glimpse of that. He sort of, as soon as he crossed the line, stopped and then went out again. So that's his sort of second flying lap, but he's still got, you know, a little bit of a cold tyres, cold brakes, and to be able to put in, you know, such a quick lap time just shows Steinbratten's pace. I mean, of course, our race winner at Monza 3 weeks ago, he's got the pace and he was, you know, the runaway winner, and I think unless anybody can find some pace out there, he might just be our runaway winner again today. But Mervang at the moment trying his best to take that little accolade away from Steinbratten through turn 9, and that's going to be an off track, and that, Tim, is going to be an invalidated lap time. And well, Mervang might just, I know he's
No.
He's going to get he'll get a slowdown. If he continued with the lap, he'll pick up a slowdown, which will invalidate the next lap anyway. So I think that might be our qualifying over, unless Rude is going to go for one lap.
While we were just watching those pictures from Mervang, Helvig put in a new and improved lap, went 2 tenths quicker, and has promoted himself up onto the front row. The RSL by G Performance driver in the Ferrari. A great lap from him. That's into the dying stages of qualifying. Rude, another of the Ferrari drivers here, looking to improve. Needs to dig deep, needs to find, well, over 2 seconds to move up on the grid. Now, Steinbratten looking good for pole. Also, let's just take you back to round 1. We were at the Cathedral of Speed that is Monza. And in qualifying with Steinbratten, he was on pole there, the first pole position of the season. Now, from that point onwards, I tell you what, it was an absolutely enthralling race. And lots of great action, pit stop strategy being put into the mix as well. Bit of door banging for good measure. All the things we come to love and expect from GT3 racing. And Steinbratten, well, he was able to convert that pole position into a win. Helvig, who's currently starting on the front row with him, he ran out second, and Mervang third. Well, that was your podium, and well, so we've picked up where we've left off, because in qualifying, guess who's our top 3? In that exact same order, Steinbratten, Helvig, and Mervang. As we're just heading straight to the pits, getting out of the car there. That's qualifying done and dusted for him, looks like. Nice to sub in the pit lane there, so not too sure, but the time's going to run out. That's going to be qualifying done and dusted for him. As we wait for the clock to tick over now before we can bring you up with our grid here from the Red Bull Ring for round 2 of the RacingLab Summer GT3 Cup. So Steinbratten makes it 2 pole positions from 2 for Mercedes and the Urano Esports team. Stefan Helvig for RSR by G Performance in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo joins him on the front row. Odin Mervang of RPC Esports, another of the Mercedes drivers, he starts in 3rd position. As for Rude, our other Ferrari in the field, he starts in 4th place. So got 2 Mercedes on the right-hand side and then 2 Ferraris on the left-hand side of the grid. So that's going to be a nice little duel up to turn 1 for us to witness. Stein Luxon of Team Happy Life Factory Esports, he starts in 5th in the lone Audi with Bjorn Rice. It's going to round out your 6-car grid here. None of the Mercedes drivers. Well, so based on this, we've got 3 Mercedes. That makes it 50% of the field. So therefore, surely, they've got a 50% chance of winning here today?
I think they've got more than a 50% chance if Steinbratten's got anything to do about it. Although, once again, we have to pick him up on his 911 number in a Mercedes. I mean, it's blasphemy. It truly is. You know, he was so quick at Monza. I think he's a shoo-in for the race win today. But it's Red Bull Ring. Anything can happen. And it's just like Monza. There's slipstream to play in. There's tyre wear. Certainly an interesting race. Certainly one to not miss out on at all. Anybody could win this race today. You see the entire field on your screen at the moment. You could be looking at the potential winner. Can't wait for this one, Tim.
So our lone Porsche in the field. The Porsche 911 safety car. Setting into the pits there. Steinbratten controlling the pace. to go a bit late, and there we go. Pedal to the metal. Let's get ready to go racing from the Red Bull Ring, and we are green, green, green as we race down to turn 1. Already, Rice in the background there, he's managed to get the jump on Loxon up into 5th place. As we head out of turn 1, already gaps starting to emerge, clear divisions in the field of where our battles are going to be taking place. But right now it's Mercedes versus Ferrari, Germany versus Italy, and the run down to Remus. Hard onto the brakes. Cyber's got this one all under control, so it seems. Needs to be careful for those sausage curves on the exit of the corner, those big yellow long curves, because they can really unsettle the car. Before we start to descend now from the highest point in the circuit down the hill to Schlossgold. Be careful, a bit of an off-camber corner here. So easy to run wide, and Steinbratton nearly loses it. In fact, holds on to it, but that's going to cost him the lead here. As Helvig says, thank you very much. I'll have some of that from you. And slots his Ferrari up the inside, and the RSR by G Performance driver now into first. And Meyervank, well, just let Steinbratton back in again with the flash of the lights. If say, come back across. It's okay, I'm not going to take you on here. It's through right. And that's where they're heading through now, Seb. That's one of the key points, isn't it, for off tracks that drivers, it's very easy to pick them up during the race. Now, the drivers do have 20 incident points to play with before they incur a penalty. See Steinbratton having a little look up the inside there into turn 1, so it's against it, and well, bouncing across the curbs on the exit of turn 1 there, Niki Lauda.
Yeah, one of our 2 corner names to be named after Formula 1 drivers, of course. Turn 9, Jochen Rindt, another driver. And as you rightly point out, Tim, one of the easiest places to gain off track. So also find turn 3, where we are now, running wide on the exit, exactly like Stefan Helvig is doing at the moment. That's going to allow Steinbratton to gain a little bit in the slipstream, although it looked like the Mercedes driver was just biding his time, saving a little bit of fuel, and that Ferrari's looking pretty decent in a straight line. Let's hope for all of our sakes that this Ferrari doesn't encounter the same issues that a certain Ferrari did here in the Formula 1 race. It's Ferrari, Mercedes, Mercedes, Ferrari. It's going to be a really good race out front, but what a great start from Helvig. He was on it as soon as Steinbratton decided to drop the green flag and go. He almost made contact with Steinbratton into turn 1. Couldn't quite get the move done into turn 3. And yes, it was a mistake by Steinbratton, but Helvig had the pace. So I think these 2 drivers are very evenly matched as they all go wide through turn 9. Well, they somehow managed to keep it within the track limits through turn 10. But if you look at the side of your graphic, whenever their number goes red, that means that the software has detected that they go off the track. So it's not always like a 1x off track, but it's normally a good indication. So watch for that. Again, Helvig. Why? This is a big opportunity for Steinbratton, Tim.
So head up the hill. Steinbratton is tucked right up behind Helvig. Now, because the drivers will have to take a pit stop, will he fuel stay behind him? No, he's not. He's going to take a lunge on the brakes. Tempted to be the last of the late breakers and gets the move done, but Helvig compromised on the exit. That's going to bring Meyervank right back into play in the 889 machine. See him. He's just behind Helvig right now, but he is filling Steinbratton's mirrors. Well, he's making it far from comfortable right now for the Urano esports driver. He's head out of Schlossgold, descending further and further down the hill. Bit of a flash of the lights in the background there for Meyervank, just trying to disrupt Helvig, just put him off his pace into the braking zone, trying to make him miss his turning point or a braking point. I think he's giving a slight competitive edge, and already Steinbratton opening up a half a second lead. There's, having a look at the background there, Meyervank just showing his nose into Jochen Rindt, but thinking twice, sticks back in again behind Helvig. And Seb, the real big power play move for attempting an overtake and then getting the move done as they all also weave a little bit down the start-finish straight, trying to break the toe, is here, getting a good exit out of Lauda, turn 1, and then onto the brakes, into Remus, the tight right-hander at the top of the hill.
It is the best opportunity to overtake on this circuit. Although, if you sort of have a clumsy move, a half-hearted move into turn 3, it leaves you very open on the run down to turn 4. So it's not a done deal. This extra straight does complicate things. Maivang is looking the quickest out of himself and Helvik at the moment. Just Helvik he's got the pace. He set unofficially the fastest lap of the race. He got an off track though while doing it, so it's not the official fastest lap. But you know, Helvik's got the pace. He just doesn't have the consistency. While Maivang is just consistently rapid, and Maivang trying to demonstrate that to Helvik by flashing his lights furiously at the Ferrari driver. Through turn 5 we go. And yeah, Steinbraten now starting to break that toe. If he gets to that magical 1 second gap, it almost feels like it's race over for the lead, unless anything happens to Steinbraten. It's exactly what happened at Monza. He got out of the slipstream range and nobody could touch him. So maybe for the race, does Helvik think, actually, I'm going to let Maivang through. I'm going to play the long game here. I'm going to use him and his pace just to bring me into play for the race lead. Maivang again flashing his lights through turns 9 and 10. But Helvik remains in second place, Maivang in third, and Ruud just outside the top 3 in 4th place. They're falling off the back of the pack, are the bottom 3, but if anything happens to the top 3, if they start squabbling, they start crashing, we could see you know, the lower echelons of the grids come into play in this race. It's a really fascinating one. I think it's a deceptively fascinating race, Tim.
So the brakes they come. And it's a late great Murray Walker once said, you know, catching people is one thing, but getting past them is something completely different altogether. And despite the flash of the lights from Maivang, who clearly feels that he is quicker than Helvik right now, he's unable to find that definitive cutting edge to get the move done. Now, Seb, obviously the beauty of GT3s is that you're able to bring lots of different car makes and different engine positions in the car and different types of engine in terms of, you know, flat 6 like we have in the Porsche Line 11, V8s, we've got in both the Ferrari and the Mercedes here, but also V10s in the Audi and the Lamborghini, because those two sharing exactly the same engine, the 5-litre V10. And what you're able to do is, due to the something called BOP, balance of performance, you're able to make them compete on a level playing field, despite all these different metrics of saying, you know, different size engines, different amounts of cylinders, different position of the engine in the car. So you have the Ferrari being mid-engined, the two Mercedes being front-engined, so it's in, you know, in the normal position in the car. But it's obviously the balanced performance. I know Mercedes have been a little bit curtailed for the Spa 24 coming up this weekend, and just explain to the viewers just how that impacts the car and some of the measures that's taken to make them more equal.
So, balance of performance, if you've ever spoken to a GT3 driver, both in real life and sim racing, that's all that they talk about, really. So, as you said, what is balance of performance? It's basically a tool that organisers, race organisers and iRacing use to basically to level the playing field, to sort of dial down some of the better characteristics from some cars and sort of make everything an even playing field. And they mainly do that by adding weight, and they normally add it to different parts of the car. And it's really interesting, actually. Some cars can benefit from a little bit more weight than others. I know the Mercedes, they have the weight in the footwell, and that can sometimes just ease a little bit of the oversteer that the Mercedes is maybe a little bit prone to. They can also limit your fuel tank size, so you have less fuel in the car for a stint, so you can't drive as long as you maybe would have liked to. And you know, while it doesn't necessarily matter in a sprint race format, in an endurance race like the Spa 24, it can make a huge difference to team strategies. They can also limit engine power, and it's something that you normally see more in sort of the GTE field, you know, when you look at Le Mans and that sort of type of racing. But you can limit the engine power, you'll be down on power, you won't have such a good straight line speed, and it's all very carefully calculated to basically bring all the cars together and to have the best race that you could possibly have. And there's always discussions about whether a car was BOP too much, whether it wasn't enough, and honestly, you're never ever going to get it perfect. It's amazing that we've got so many different manufacturers, as you mentioned, engine types, engine placements, different configurations of how that they want to make the car go fast, in a very simplistic way of saying it. it's amazing that they race so close. So I think it's a thankless task making the BOP, and I wouldn't like to do it.
No, it definitely is, and you know, you see at the Le Mans 24 hour, you know, where certain teams will, well, all the teams, they'll try and sandbag as much as possible during free practice sessions, during qualifying, during hyperpole, to ensure that they don't get had by the BAP. I can remember back in 2017, I believe it was, where GTE Pro was at its absolute highest at Le Mans, where you had the BMW M8, you had the Ford GT, the Corvette, Aston, Porsche, Ferrari. It was fascinating racing to watch. And that day was such a shame because the Astons got had by the BAP, and as much as it was absolutely epic racing, wheel to wheel, after 3 hours, a whole long line of GTE Pro cars, all of them in one long line, but the Astons were just starting to fall off and weren't able to compete. It's such a real shame, but wow, talking of not being able to compete and having to get rid of his slowdown, Bjorn Rice, they're slowing down horrifically, just trying to burn off the slowdown that he'd incurred, and what was an enthralling little battle with Luxon in the Audi R8 Gt3, as then had to back right out of it to try and burn it off as quick as possible. And I mean, Seb, it's like a bit of a double penalty in some way, especially if you catch the corner and you lose a lot of time through there. When you get those slowdown penalties, you have to serve a certain defined amount of time, which depending on how iRacing feels, how much you can cut the track by, it feels like a double penalty, because not only do you lose time from not getting the corner right, but then to have to serve that penalty and get through it as quick as possible, it's just soul destroying at times. And you've got to really feel for Royce there, and he's got his work cut out, because now he needs to make up nearly a 3-second gap to Loxon, where he was battling wheel to wheel for it with him.
Slowdowns are one of the worst penalties that you can get in iRacing. You don't get, the 5-second penalties you might see in real life racing for track limits infringement. It's a much more direct penalty, and you're right, it is a double penalty. You lose the time for taking the corner wrong, especially around turn 9 and 10 here at the Red Bull Ring, where you most commonly will get a slowdown. You lose so much time because you're on the curve, you're having to correct a little bit of oversteer, there's just not as much momentum in the car, and you just fall away. And I remember talking to a pro driver that was saying, actually, we'll have a look. This is Steinbraten. What's going to happen to him? This is his incident his incident, should I say, a little bit of a mistake on lap 1. So he's into turn 4, just simply runs too wide. This is just an effect of cold tyres, hits the gravel on the exit of the corner, where we've seen so many drivers previously make mistakes. He does well to keep it out of the barriers and facing in somewhat in the right direction, and he just loses the place to Stefan Helvik, although, as we know, in a few laps' time, he'll make that place up and it'll be like nothing ever happened. He'll be riding ball with Mervang, trying to do the same thing that Steinbraten did a few laps ago, getting past Helvik and moving his Mercedes car up into second place. But just to go back to the slowdowns, it is like a double penalty. It's really difficult, and again, like the BAP, you always hear drivers in iRacing complain about slowdowns being a little bit too harsh, and some places give you more unfair penalties than others. But I remember talking, I think it was to Apex Racing's very own Jamie Fluke, and you were saying basically if you get a slowdown with a race in the first few laps, that's your race over. You might as well park the car, because you're never going to recover from that. You lose so much time, so minimizing getting the slowdowns and frankly not getting them at all is the way that you want to run your races.
Since Steinbraten obviously got ahead, he's already managed to open up a 3.4 second advantage. But interestingly, Meyer van Spijk harrying and harassing Helvik. He's been and flashing the lights as well, unable to get the move done, and get a feeling that now maybe just sitting behind him, sitting in his draft, and looking to play the fuel-saving game here to see how much he can extend his pit stop in a replay. So this is looking back from Steinbraten. The outside cameras now. So this is into Remus, and electing to just miss the apex there. Now, Seb, that could quite often actually be the faster line, because you're not unsettling the car with the dramatic elevation change, well, I could say dramatic elevation change, is not as dramatic as the elevation change that you have through the corkscrew at Long Beach, where you drop through the equivalent of 9.5 stories with a space of a few hundred, like, no one would have lied, about 300 meters. It's a frightening, death-defying drop, but obviously this is uphill, but you can really, really unsettle the rear and either get into the traction control, or for those cars that do not have traction control, especially the Porsche Cup, the rear end becomes incredibly loose, and you lose a lot of time that way as well, from just unable to get the power down, whether it's having traction control and that cutting in, or not having traction control and unable to, you know, get it down properly, and it's just moving around and apply the traction.
Yeah, what I love to watch, especially when we have the Formula 1 come to Red Bull Ring, is watch each different driver's different approach to turn 3. You're right, some drivers do prefer the outside line to not run that risk of getting into the traction control, or even it's about the diff and making sure that both wheels are spinning somewhat at the same rate, so when they both touch the ground, there's not a huge differential, like the diff of the car. There's not a huge differential in how quickly the both wheels are spinning. There's a technique of keeping your throttle, or your foot on the throttle, I should say, just like 15 or 20%, just to keep the diff engaged. But some drivers like to take the curve. They like to take the shortest line. In theory, it is the quicker line to take the risks in, go over the elevation, clip the yellow curb as much as you can, but it's certainly not a fun thing to do from the cockpit. And when I've ever driven GT3s around this circuit, you never ever feel like you've got a great run out of the corner if you take that line. But I think there we just saw Steinbraten just brake a little bit too late. I mean, he's out in the lead at the moment. The gap is almost 4 seconds. You can forgive him for just relaxing a little bit at the wheel, maybe not, you know, super focused on the precise point that he has to put on the brakes, maybe, you know, just daydreaming a little bit. He's not got too much to do out there at the moment. No pressure from behind, and that's a real threat. You know, if you are in the lead of a race, you can just sort of start to lose a little bit of focus, and it's so easy to make a mistake around here, especially at the Red Bull Ring. Grass is so close to the edge of the track. We saw Steinbraten make the mistake on lap 1. He clipped the gravel, I should say, and almost ended up in the wall. Mervang, though, really trying to get past Helvig. These two drivers certainly not lacking any attention. Their full focus will be on keeping the car on the track, trying to get the maximum out of each corner. It is, I mean, there are so many sort of different stories going on. Just wish that the top 3 were a little bit closer, but it's a long race to go, Tim. Anything could happen.
Get that feeling, Seb. Anything will happen. Just over a quarter way through the race. 17, nearly 18 minutes, in fact, complete out of the 1 hour that we have here at the Red Bull Ring in the racing conditions. Steinbraten, he leads, as you mentioned, with a 4.3 second advantage over Helvig in second. Mervang selecting to sit behind Helvig in these early stages of the race, and these guys are currently lapping at around about 8/10 of a second off our leader's pace. So that's how that gap is starting to evolve and increase in these early stages. That's Ruud in the Ferrari 488. He is in 4th place, with Team Happy Life Factory Esports driver Logson in the Audi R8 V10. He is occupying 5th place with Bjorn Royce. Unfortunately, that slowdown costing him so dearly, and unable to quite come back to it. The gap 3.9 seconds between himself and Logson, but he's occupying 6th for now. And then all it takes is a slight mistake from Logson. That will bring him right back into play. And Helvig having to punch a hole in the air now for Mervang. And Seb, you know, saying about how we have 2 corners here named after Formula 1 drivers. Obviously, Niki Lauda turn 1, Jochen Rindt in the penultimate corner. Of course, both drivers, well, this is where it gets a little bit technical, because obviously Niki Lauda was an Austrian driver, born and bred. Jochen Rindt was German-born, but competed under an Austrian license during his racing career, despite not being an Austrian citizen. Interesting one for you there. He was born in Mainz in Germany, all the way back in 1942. And oh, we've got a replay here. This Born Royce. Let's take a look at what's happened to him. Oh, I've seen it from our software here. The gap has increased between himself and Loxon. Oh, just out wide onto the gravel, pushing incredibly hard, trying to close that gap down, and a slight mistake costing him dearly.
Could have been so much worse though had it not been for traction control. We've seen many a car end up in the gravel, spear across the track, so traction control doing its job, but yeah, exactly what Royce didn't need. The gap is doubled. It's now 6.3 seconds. Going back to your fact about Jochen Rindt, very interesting. I always thought that he was an Austrian driver and was born in Austria, so yeah, I mean, the other fact, of course, the more famous fact about Jochen Rindt is that he's the only posthumously awarded F1 champion. Tragically died in the season that he won his championship, but he had enough points through the midsection of the championship that he ended up winning it anyway. But what a talent he could have been, and it's nice to see that history being shown here at the Red Bull Ring. Of course, with Niki Lauda also having a corner named after him, couldn't have a Red Bull Ring, couldn't have a circuit in Austria without naming Niki Lauda, the most famous Austrian driver. And also, Tim, I'm going to bring out a fact now, the only Austrian driver to ever win his home Grand Prix.
You know, I'm a stickler for a great fact, Seb. I'm going to see that one for you, and I'm going to raise you one here. Actually, I'm torn. I've got two facts. So, Jochen Rindt only has a corner named after him here, but also at Zolder as well. And I can't think of a driver that has a corner named after him at more than one circuit.
Oh, now that's a really interesting question. Jim Clark? Yeah, I know he has a corner named after him at Brands Hatch, and I'm trying to like rack my brain if there's another British circuit. I think that's a very interesting fact that you've brought up, Tim. Is Mervang still trying to gain on Helvig? The gap is just stagnating a little bit. It's within that half a second window where you've got the worst of both worlds, or the best of one world and the worst of other, I should say. You've got the slipstream. That's going to keep you in check through the straights, but on the corners you're going to be hitting the Ferrari's dirty air, just losing a little bit of front grip, and Mervang is in that invisible bubble. He can't push. He might feel like he's quicker, but he just simply doesn't have the front end grip to catch up to the Ferrari driver anymore. So I think Mervang going to have to play the long game here, save a bit of fuel, and see if he can either undercut or maybe even overcut Helvig at the pit stops.
It's definitely going to come down to strategy, this battle for second place here at the Red Bull Ring. See Helvig and Mervang. And right now, with surely the fuel saving that's going on, this is advantage Mervang over Helvig. But has he done enough to make that advantage? Of course, you can lose quite a bit of time from your pit entry, and it'd be interesting to see when the drivers do make their way to the pit lane. Who has and who hasn't been practicing their pit entries, because it's how, you know, ensuring you get as close to the pit speed limiter line. Obviously, with reducing the speed off, we're not, you know, scrubbing off too early, or heaven forbid, not scrubbing off enough and incurring a speeding in the pit lane time penalty, which will completely and utterly transform your race in a highly negative way. There's a stumble with Mervang there, and heading out of Werf. Take lots of the curb there out onto the green concrete. Before we come through to Jochen Rindt, as we just mentioned, walking up on the inside there and through into the right. And I was just thinking of the FIA Grade 1 license track, Seb. Obviously, talking about, you know, drivers having corners named after them. I'm struggling as well to think of another FIA Grade 1 circuit, so therefore able to host a Formula 1 event that has there's about 2 corners named after drivers.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is there's, you know, Hockenheim and Monza both have a corner named the Parabolica, but that isn't after a driver, and in fact the Monza corner now named after a driver. But yeah, it's a really interesting point. I'm not quite sure when I think of you know, sort of Silverstone. I mean, it's sort of a trend of it's dying down of naming corners after famous drivers. I think the last time that I could think about was when Lewis Hamilton had the Lewis Hamilton straight named after him at Silverstone, although that was a straight rather than a corner. We can just discuss the semantics of that in a minute. This is Ruud, the number 95 Ferrari, taking a very adventurous line into turn 3. That is undoubtedly an off track there, Tim. He just ran too wide, and that's what's triggered our software to say he's gone off the track, because he simply did. He drove off the track into the braking zone of turn 3. The stewards will not be happy with him for that whatsoever. The 95 Ferrari really needs to stop doing that, because, yeah, as we were mentioning earlier on in the broadcast, off tracks, 1Xs are going to be so important around here. You can't take them when they're really not necessary, and I deem that to be fairly an easy one to avoid. It's so much harder when you're on the exit of the corner, when you're pushing the limits of the track, but when you're on the entrance to the corner where you've got control over the car, you know where you're going to brake, it's frankly unacceptable that you start picking up 1Xs there. So yeah, Ruud really needs to dial that in, dial back his pace, and just try and stay on the white between the white lines.
So heading out of Red Bull Mobile there. Side Andre Loxton, Team Happy Life Factory Esports. The Audi, it's known a little bit for being quite pointy in terms of its turn-in and a bit snappy. Now, that can have its advantages and its disadvantages, can't it, Seb? Because great for, you know, tracks where you have to be quite agile and turn in, especially when the tyres are a little bit worn. You can actually use that to your advantage potentially, but it is like dancing with the devil at times, and it's one of its weaknesses, but equally it's its strength at the same time for that specific car.
It is. So what do we mean when we say a car's pointy? Well, it tends to mean that the front end has got more grip than the rear. So when you turn in the car, the front end has got so much grip that the rear starts to lose traction, so the front has more grip. That creates oversteer. Now, some very, very accomplished drivers like a car to be pointy. Max Verstappen, Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, all are drivers that can drive a really pointy car, but it pushes the balance towards oversteer. So you're going to struggle on exit, but gain a lot of time on entry. And you're right, some tracks really suit the Audi. Imola is a great circuit for the Audi. Whenever the VRS or the GT3 series in iRacing goes to Imola, you always see a whole host of Audis. Long Beach is another one. Any circuits, I should say, that have really tight, twisty sections, especially corners where you're sort of quick left, right, or right, left chicanes. The Audi is so superior, but when you start to get into long, high-speed corners, Sebring comes to mind. Turn 1 there. I've driven the Audi a few times around there and had some major accidents because of the Audi doing Audi things, as we say. Bjorn Royce is our first driver to come into the pits, and he's overshot his pit box there, Tim. That's going to cost him some more time.
Just caught it. Oh, no,
he's still going.
He is. It can't. A bit of a strange, because we sat there for quite a while. We reversed again, and it's gone from bad to worse for Royce. Somebody get that man a beer. I think he's going to need one after today, because it's so unfortunate. And that's ever since that slowdown, it's just all come undone a little bit for him. And very early in the pit window as well, 29 minutes. We tend to see drivers run the fuel as long as they possibly can. It could be that he's elected for a bit of an alternate strategy and not started with maximum fuel to just offer up a little bit different. But that does come with its own issues and compromises, in the sense that you have to put more fuel in, and therefore you're stationary for longer to get yourself home to the end of the race. But that number 3 Mercedes Now falling the lap down because of it, but equally the drivers in front of him, nobody else has stopped, so will more than likely unlap himself and remain on the lead lap. So it's just coming up, you see Halvik who's coming up behind him, but there's Loxon once again. And the gap between the pair of them now, 1 minute and 5 seconds, which is, well, interestingly, based on the pit lane time, he lost 1 minute and 8 during the pit lane. Obviously, that's his transition time. And that's not truly, you know, a definitive of that gap, because obviously he's travelling along while obviously heading through. It's not fully stationary. But, oh, as he gets incredibly loose and Larry out of Schlossgold there, having to get out of the throttle and apply a little bit more to get the car pointing in the right direction. Tokyo drift style out of Schlossgold there for Loxon. And he may be driving for Team Happy Life Factory, but well, if that had all gone wrong and purchased him a one-way ticket to the battery, he definitely would not be experiencing a happy life right now, Seb. So we've got Atul Ruud, he's into the pits. We've got 2 Ferraris in the field. Onto the brakes, and there we go, he's stopped. It'd be interesting to see how long he's going to be stationary for and compare it to Bjorn Royce. He's was our first stopper today at the Red Bull Ring.
Certainly will be. Sorry, Tim, to cut in there, yeah, because Royce, of course, had to reverse twice. I think he spent more time stationary than he did actually going down the pit lane. So, oh, Ruud is taking tyres. Spinning up the rear wheels, though, as we can see from the camera shot. But I'm surprised that we're seeing drivers change tyres here. This is a little bit of a strategic call here from the 95 Ferrari.
But so we haven't touched on the weather here today in in Austria. 25 degrees Celsius, obviously ambient air temperature, but we do have a track temperature of 45 degrees Celsius. Now, that as well, the positive of it's very easy to get your tyres warmed up and up to temperature, but you do run the risk with the harder you push them, you overheat the tyres, and then it becomes like this less grip available. As all this Maivang. He's really turning up the pressure to the maximum. He knows he's getting towards his pit window, heads to the outside. He'll look to swoop around the long way round here against Halvik, and he's got the move done in spectacular fashion on the 32-minute mark. And Halvik with no answer to the RPC Esports Mercedes driver at Remus. What a move from Maivang. I doff my cap to you, sir. Right round the outside, and just made it look like he was out for a nice walk in the park after a lovely roast dinner on a Sunday afternoon, Seb.
One of the only successful moves I think I've ever seen around the outside of turn 3 at the Red Bull Ring. Mervang, I mean, that was 32 minutes in the making for the Mercedes driver, but what has that cost him? The gap now 7.5 seconds to his Mercedes teammate, as it were, Steinbraten. You know, he got the move done, but could he or should he have been able to do that sooner? Because he might have had an opportunity at going for the lead, but that's all fallen away for him. But as you said, superb move around the outside of turn 3, and it looks like Helvik just doesn't have a response to him whatsoever. Just he's got no pace left in his tank, and you see the Audi driver in the back, and there, Lokson. You just saw on the back of the train between sorry, as you actually know, it was a different car. I'll rescind my point that I was about to make there, Tim, because I was about to be catastrophically wrong, and I don't want to look like I'm a little bit of an idiot. It was Ruud. All right, I'm coming back in on the point. So I thought it was Ruud. So my point is that Ruud, he's pitted, and you can just see him on the back of Mervang and Helvik. So he is sort of in the mirrors, and you do see that from the car. You are able, especially with a race that, you know, is not got sort of wall-to-wall action. You are looking around you. You're looking at your relative. You're looking in your mirror. So the drivers ahead of him will be aware that Ruud has come into the pits. He's lost a lap, and they'll be thinking, well, why is that? Because I know that the pit stop is, you know, about 30-40 seconds. So they'll be noticing that Ruud has taken tyres. So all of their strategic brains are going to be firing at the moment. They're going to be wondering what they're going to do for their own pit stop. It's a really fascinating race, and I really cannot wait to see our top 3 come into the pits.
It's definitely going to be an interesting dynamic to see how that one plays out between those guys. And we've got two freeway battles emerging. Steinbart and Marvang and Helvig, that battle for the podium, and then battle for the best of the rest between Loxenrud and Royce being plotted out here in Spielberg in Austria, in the rolling Styrian hills, and well, like the Julie Andrews musical, The Sound of Music, wow, the hills are alive with the sound of GT3s of the RacingLab Summer Series GT3 Cup. As we're on board with Helvig. What answer has he got up his sleeve to Marvang, who, after 32 minutes of being sat behind Helvig, looking at his rear bumper, got the move done. He has been harassing and haranguing him, including flashing the lights at more than a few stages to try and distract him, to no avail. Helvig was having none of it whatsoever, but in the end, just that's not even a mistake, just didn't get as good an exit out of turn 1 compared to Marvang, and that's what's facilitated the move. And that means we've got a Mercedes 1-2 here today, but still all to play for. We've got 24 minutes left on the clock. Still plenty of racing, plenty of laps. Due to the short nature of the track, 129 is what our top 3 drivers are lapping at currently, towards the 130 mark, somewhere in that window. Line 129's into the 130, so we're going to have around about high 30s in terms of laps here, possibly into the 40s, so lots of opportunity, only on lap 25 currently. But I think obviously Marvang has spent so long, as I mentioned, behind Helvig. Surely he's got to have been fuel saving, and I think this has got to be advantage Marvang, because not only now has he got track position, but it means he'll have to take on less fuel compared to Helvig if they are on exactly the same pit strategy, i.e. they started with the same amount of fuel. So this could be potentially his second place to lose.
I really think it is. Marvang has the best of both worlds, and just to add into that, he's gapping Helvig, and soon the Ferrari isn't even going to have the slipstream, which is oh so crucial for effective fuel saving. Marvang is really in the driver's seat, as it were, right now, no pun intended. He's got everything going for him. He's got track position. Well, he went a little bit wide there, but apart from that, he's got track position, he's fuel saved, he's been able to fuel save, and he's gapping the Ferrari, although that mistake has cost him into turn 8, and now Marvang is under pressure from Helvig through turn 9 and 10 we go. Does Helvig think about maybe having a little bit of a look on the inside of turn 1, catching the Mercedes by surprise? Steinbraten also, well, not really taking us by surprise, I should say. 1 minute 29.62. That's the fastest lap of the race, so he is leading this pair by 9 seconds, but still feels the need to pump in those fastest laps of the race. But Marvang now, it was all going so well for him, but that mistake has really cost him, Tim. And I think Helvig, he's got an invested interest in this fight. He'll feel it keenly, you know, staying ahead of the Mercedes for so long, only to be overtaken around the outside of turn 3. Helvig will even extra want to overtake Marvang for second.
It's going to be close, Seb. It's going to be close as he gets close, under braking into Slosh Gold there. Right, they wind up the cars, heading down to Roush, and then into Worth. Two connecting corners by this short straight here. We come back past the national circuit, where he loops back round to join up with the main Grand Prix circuit, and little snag of the gravel there from Helvig. That's not going to affect him too much, but this Ferrari is coming alive in the second half of the race as he hunts down Marvang, who had only recently, in racing terms, made it past him. And these are two drivers that are absolutely going full chat, pushing each other to the absolute limit right now. But they will have to pit soon. And who will come out the other side in front? And will they stay in there? Well, it's not going to be long to find out. Let's just run through the order. Just coming up to 40 minutes complete. Out of 1, hour. Let's hold on. We're going to see a move here from Helvig. He's going to return the favour up the inside. But look at that. Maivang has the answer for him on the outside. Just able to get that power down and carry that bit of more speed through the corner compared to Helvig. Maivang is absolutely loving the outside line around Remus, Seb.
I think he's taken your advice, Tim, about the better line. He's outside line. No, he's right! How did they not make contact?
I genuinely do not know, Seb. Because literally he was turning right through no fault of his own way, just got onto the grass and just lost the rear. The Mercedes GT AMG. And it looked like it was going to be game over for the pair of them. He was going to spear straight into the side of Helvig's Ferrari, but somehow, and I'm still not even sure how, managed to bring it back from a near-death experience there. But it's now down to Berg. Advantage Helvig once again. And this is game on. We're going to get a replay here, so here we go. We're going to see it now. From Helvig's point of view. You see him get really loose. There you go. Just caught a little bit of the gravel. Got scrolly and wow. So we'll break out a cigarette paper because that must have been the gap between those two to avoid contact. Incredibly close stuff, but drama here on the 40-minute mark. And this is only going to get hotter and hotter as we creep forward towards that hour race distance, Seb.
Sim time just 3 minutes past 2, so you're right, the track temp is going to keep on increasing. The temperature inside the cockpits or inside the sim rigs also building this battle. Helvig and Mervang been going on for so long now, about 41 minutes to be precise. It really does drain you mentally. You start feeling flustered, you start making more mistakes, as we saw Mervang doing. I mean, uncharacteristic mistake from the Mercedes driver. I would love to see it on board from Mervang's perspective, to see how close he got to that Ferrari. Great avoidance by Helvig to avoid what could have been a huge accident that could have taken them both easily out of the race. But I still think that Mervang has the upper hand right now, Tim. You know, yes, he's not got track position, but he has got more fuel mileage. He's got basically everything better apart from the track position. But I am surprised that we didn't see Mervang just come into the pits as soon as he made that mistake. Just come into the pits, allow the tyres to cool down in the pit stop. Of course, after that slide, they would have been hot. They would have been really overheated. So I'm surprised we didn't see him come down pit lane, take some fuel, and sort of try it in the long run. But Mervang coming back at Helvig, this time on the inside.
There we go. Game on between the pair of them, and up the inside goes Mervang, making that already incredibly wide Mercedes even wider to block off and kill the momentum from Helvig. But he's on the attack once again as we run down the hill to Sloshko. They're side by side. They almost touch wing mirrors and hard onto the brakes, trying to be the last of the late breakers there. And Helvig, he's not going to get it done because once again, absolutely loving that outside line is Mervang. And he's going to, well, even if they remain side by side, he was going to have the inside line into the next two corners. But he's got it done as they headed into Roush and was able to cut across, in fact, back onto the racing line to get the car turned in. Wow, it really carried an incredible amount of speed around the outside line step. That Mercedes is looking absolutely epic right now. And these two are really spoiling for a fight.
They are. I mean, there's not much going out on track at the moment, so I think they must be relishing a little bit of action between the two. They certainly are giving each other lots of respect, lots of space, although a little bit of contact at turn 4, but nothing too major. What do they say? Rubbing is racing. I think what we're seeing at the moment is Mervang goes wide. This is going to give an opportunity to Helvig, but Mervang, he's been behind the Ferrari. He's been able to not only save fuel, but to save his tyres as well, and I think that's what's allowing him, Tim, to be able to make these moves around the outside, carry more grip, because Helvig has been in the front of the pack, really having to push to keep the Mercedes behind, where Mervang can simply, or could simply just cruise. He could save fuel, save the tyres, and that's just paying dividends for him at the moment.
we are down nearly to a quarter of an hour race. 3/4 race distance completed. Steinbratton leads. That's up for the large majority of the race for Audi Esports and the Mercedes. And second and third place, Maivang and Halvik, as they are at the moment. The RPC Esports driver leading over the RS start by G Performance driver Mercedes leading over Ferrari. They are starting to encroach onto the rear end. That's Bjorn Royce just in front of them there. And they're going to clear with relative ease in the end. He lets them through. See these two battling and dueling like two gladiators here in Austria. Allows them through. The only thing that worries me about these, Seb, now we did talk about the track limits here at the Red Bull Ring, and with these two pushing so hard, and I'm sure probably taking some tactical ones to try and get an advantage over their rival right now, but I'm sure they're racking up those incident points, and it's how close they are to the 20 mark and incurring a drive-through penalty because of it.
And that's got to be a concern. If we see Helvik again go for the grass, so trying his qualifying strategy in race conditions, that won't be good for your incident count.
Seb, is he, I'm guessing then, from doing that, because there's a way to cool the tyres down. I know it sounds incredibly weird, but that's the magic and one of the uniquenesses of sim racing, but clearly, it seems to me like he's struggling with tyre temperatures right now, and those tyres are absolutely cooked, and as much as he tries and is pushing incredibly hard to stay on the back of Maivang, but he's then generating even more heat and trying to be a bit like a wily old fox and pull every little trick out of the bag just to try and take a slight edge and cool them off somehow to give himself half a fighting chance here.
And that's the disadvantage of the Ferrari. It's absolutely rapid in a straight line, but much like its Formula 1 relative, I should say, it really struggles on tyre wear, and especially tyre heat when you get into these sort of last few laps of a stint. It's his biggest downfall, and it's why you don't see many pro teams run the Ferrari. So Helvik, he's had the benefit of the straight line speed, he's had the benefit of its good handling. And you can hear Helvik there just fuel saving into turn 3, not trying to attack or even to scare Mervang into any form of mistake. Helvik now thinking all about his fuel and his fuel mileage. But as I was saying, the Ferrari, it's the worst on tyres. That's why you don't see it in the upper echelons of the iRacing world. It's quick, but it's not quick enough over a full stint. It doesn't have that consistency, which is so crucial in GT3 racing. While it's the Mercedes, it doesn't have maybe necessarily that extra few tenths on the opening laps. It just keeps on going. It can maintain its temperature so perfectly. It's such a trooper, I think, is the only way I can describe it. It's the best endurance car, or one of the best endurance cars out there. And you know, when we have these 1 hour races, the best endurance car really does win out. So Helvik is fighting an uphill battle at the moment. What can he do to try and dethrone the Mercedes? I'm not quite sure, but Helvik doing his absolute best, and again it feels like he's been off the track more than he's been on it as we were riding on board with him that lap. Mervang sets his personal best. Helvik though a tenth quicker, even Tim, with fuel saving into turn 3. So Helvik has got some pace behind him. Is it enough to overtake the Mercedes? I think only time will tell.
I think you're right there, Seb. Time will definitely tell indeed. And we are encroaching ever close to that pit window period. So our top 4, they are yet to stop. Steinbratton, Maivang, Helvik and Loxon. 2 Mercedes, a Ferrari and an Audi. And who's going to come out on top? It remains to be seen. Well, Steinbratton, despite, you know, building an advantage early on, it's sort of stagnated a bit, which is surprising, seeing as though these two have been battling hammer and tong so much and costing themselves lap time because of it. The gap 12.8 seconds. I mean, it's still a healthy lead. It's sizable and meaty. But Steinbratton not maybe maximising, just playing the safe game here. There is your leader, Verano Esports. So we're talking about... Go on, Seb, I'll let you go.
I was just going to say, I'd be surprised if Steinbratton was pushing... Oh,
well, there you go. What do we know, Seb?
What do we know? Helvig into the pits, though.
Yes, I was just about to say that very thing. So, seeing a replay. Just a few issues in the live pictures. There we go. Back to him now. So, Helvig has checked out early. He is into the pits. Oh, Seb, hold on. He's just stopped and gone again.
So he got enough fuel to finish the race, but they technically have to pit under the rule. So he saved enough that he can get to the end, whatever, but he has to come into the pits. Is that a little bit of a tactical play by Stefan Helvig on the RSR Ferrari 488?
Well, it looks that... We're hearing fuel saving again. That sounds like a very confident person who thinks he's going to get home to the end, because it's... Playing the old trick of shifting up and down there to gain that little bit of extra speed heading down the pit lane.
So he was stationary for 1.42 seconds.
I'm not even sure that that's right, Seb, in terms of him being stationary, because he basically stopped and he went again.
He did, and if anybody sort of within the iRacing endurance world, you'll know that it's about 2 or so seconds per litre of fuel. So he didn't even get a litre of fuel, not even a lap's worth. So Helvig really not needing any form of fuel in his tank. It'll be interesting to see if he does pull into the pit lane this time by, but certainly doesn't look like he's going to. No, he isn't. What is Mervan going to do? This could decide the battle for second place right now. What does the Mercedes driver do? He stops.
Oh, and he definitive stop there compared to Helvig, and there you go. He might be able to just catch the green roof of this car. Well, that was the Mercedes of Royce there, but Helvig in the slipstream range in the Ferrari of Royce. It's going to help drag him all the way up the hill to Remus, and that is the change for second position. And couldn't ask for him much better as well, because Mayavan is going to get held up by Royce through Remus. And right now, Helvig is scampering away up the road. 52 minutes left on the clock here in Austria. And drama in the battle for second place. Seb, that worked out absolutely perfectly for Helvig. He was stationary for left side. Our leader, Steinbrand, he is into the pit. Some complete drama. He should come straight back out again and be in the lead with that comfortable lead. Let's just stick with him, hopefully, as he heads through the pits. Let's see what happens to him. Drop of the gears into first, comes to a stop. And there we go. A very identical stop to what we saw for Maivang. It's off again, and it's going to resume that sizable lead he'd already built up. But Helvig, new fastest lap, well, personal best from him, 129.791. He is pushing hard in these depths of the race here from round 2. Wow, well, I crack it. It just all the stars all aligned for Helvig there, Seb. He was stationary for less time. And then when Mayavan came out of the pits a lap late, after pissing a lap later than Helvig, Helvig had all the 2 cars between himself and Mayavan going through Remus, which really held him up. And also the run-ups of Remus, Helvig had the slipstream from Royce as well to help just accentuate that gap even further. And now Maivang has got all of the work to do. 1.65 seconds behind Helvig.
The only thing I can think about at the moment is, you know, Helvig's been leading this battle or this pair of drivers for the majority of the race. Has Helvig been able to fuel save enough, or has Mervang got more fuel in the tank is Helvik going to have to play it safer? Is he going to have to go slower? Is his lap times going to be affected by his fuel saving? This race is not over, but Helvik has played an absolute strategic blinder at the minute. If he can make it work, I think that must be one of the most cleverest of strategies I have ever seen in a GT3 race before. Absolutely superb strategic thinking from the Ferrari driver, unlike the Ferrari Formula 1, his Ferrari counterparts in Formula 1, I should say. Certainly going against the trend of Ferrari not having good strategies, but what can Mervank do? What are his emotions right now in the car? Is he disappointed? Is he upset with himself? Or is he able to keep it cool, keep hitting every apex, every braking zone, maximizing the time that he is gaining on Helvik? Because at the moment that gap is fairly stationary. Helvik last lap, a 1 minute 30 flat. That's up with some of the best lap times that Mervang has been able to do in the race. Helvik really consistent, so Mervang needs an absolutely stellar final few laps if he wants to take second place.
It really needs to dig deep because time is against him. 4.5 minutes left on the clock. We're on lap 37. Stuybrand leads from Helvik, Myvan, Loxon, Rude and Royce running out despite only having 6 cars here today for round 2. The action-packed race that we have seen. Drama from the green flag and the new fastest lap there for Steinbraten, 1:29.316. As he is looking to assert his domination on this championship further. Picked up the win and pole position in the previous round. Started today at the Red Bull Ring with pole. Looking to turn that into another victory to make it 2 wins and 2 poles on the bounce for him. And right now we have got a carbon copy of the podium we saw at round 1 at Monza with Helvik and Marvang in 2nd and 3rd respectively. But as we've seen already, one mistake is all it takes for this race to be transformed, flipped on its head, and potentially the story is not fully written here today. Not long to find out though. 3 minutes left on the clock now, out of the 1 hour race. Now looking at it, Seb, I think we've got at least 2 laps, and my calculations possibly a 3rd, but definitely 2. Actually, just looking at the clock now as Cyber comes across the line, it's going to be 2 laps. So they've got, at the end of this lap, it will be white flag here at the Red Bull Ring, the final lap. And it's not looking good for Maya Vang Seb, because that gap has grown to 2.2 seconds. Is that a driver who's maybe graciously accepting defeat and this race has got away from him?
It certainly seems that way. His last lap time was about... Actually, no, I take it back. It was 0.2 quicker than Helvik, but it just isn't quick enough to do anything about it. The gap is simply too big to have those little margins sort of be impactful in any sort of way. Mervang, I think, has or should be realizing at this point that the race isn't on. He just needs to almost conserve the car, conserve that 3rd place. It's good points for the championship. It might not be where he feels he could have gotten today, but I mean, that's racing, and you have to say that Helvik has played an absolute blinder with the strategy. Rude, Drember, you know, a few laps ago, well, quite a few laps ago now, he took the tyres, he took some new tyres, and he managed to get past the Audi of Loxon. Loxon making a mistake, and Rude up into 4th place. So it's worked out for the 95 car. There you go. There's the mistake on your... there's the overtake on your screen. Done and dusted for Rude. So Rude, his strategy has worked out well. So both Ferraris having interesting, exciting strategies. Both of them working out for them in their own ways.
This has really worked out for the 2 Ferrari drivers. And that is how the white flag is in the air here. 1 lap left to go. This is looking like it's done and dusted. You can feel the reluctance in my voice, I'm sure there, Sam, to say it, but I think this is just a tour for the last lap. Certainly for Steinbart, just needs to bring home a comfortable 12.2 second advantage. He's got practically nearly afford to crawl around the circuit. But that equally does come at his own risk because, you know, yourself being the GT racer knows full well that, you know, if you sometimes back out too much, you lose your rhythm. And actually, it costs you far more than if you've just gone full chat.
It really can. I remember famously Damon Hill crashed at Monza when he was leading in the race because this team told him that he didn't need to push anymore. It is certainly a factor that can really impact your driving, but I think Steinbraten's got such a lead, he could stop. If we were in real life, I'd expect him to stop by the side of a marshal's post, pick up his flag and come across the line with it hanging out the window. Such is Steinbraten's gap. He comes across the line to win round 2 of the RacingLab GT3 series. A little bit of damage there to the front of that Mercedes car, but it won't matter for him in any way, shape or form. He does some very nice celebrations, and look at that, Tim. Stefan Helvig, 2nd place. Superb strategy from the Ferrari.
Commiserations, my vein. I mean, well, you could say commiserations. It's still a place on the podium, but this is going to be a little bit of a story of what could have been, and well, we've seen it. 2 rounds, 2 identical podiums of the RacingLab Summer GT3 Cup. Rounds 1 and 2 at Monza in the Red Bull Ring. Yeah, so you see Logson, he's going to pit. There we go. Team Happy Life Factory esports driver in the Audi R8 V10, picking up 5th here today. Be able to bring you up some classified results very, very shortly as we just wait for the drivers to cross the line. There we go. So Steinbraten officially taking the victory here today at the Red Bull Ring for Arado Esports in the Mercedes GT-AMG GT3 Evo. Stefan Helvig in 2nd for Ferrari and for RSR by G Performance, with Odin Meyervang of RPC Esports and another of the Mercedes runners finishing 3rd in that last podium place. That's a Rude, our 2nd Ferrari in the field, 1 lap down the privateer. So the best of the rest crown goes to him. Stein Andre Logson of Team Happy Life Factory Esports in the Audi R8 V10, picking up 5th place. With another of our privateers, Bjorn Royce, finishing 2 laps down in the end. Watching that early slowdown cost him so dearly for the Mercedes driver. Well, so unlucky for him. But let's have a little bit of a chat to our drivers, I think. First up, Seb, I think I'm going to pick up, let's have a chat with our winner here today. Now joined by Ole Steinbraten of Arano Esports. Well, that just seemed like a bit of a walk in the park once you get out in the front there, Ollie, early on. And it's just a case of just managing the race and ensuring that you claim victory here today.
Yeah, I knew my pace was good. I didn't get too much practice, but it was still strong, so I just kept it clean and tried to minimize the risks and off tracks, and then got it home.
And in terms of the track temperatures out there, they were, incredibly warm at 44 degrees Celsius. Obviously, not quite as hot as what they potentially can be, but even so, just put us inside the car of what it's like to drive with those hot track temperatures in the brand new Mercedes iRacing.
Yeah, luckily the Mercedes is very stable, but of course, like on this track, you need like lower wing than usual, and especially in these track temps, it was very loose in some of the corners. So in some of the corners, I'm basically just rolling through the corner, and even then, it's like very on the edge. So it's challenging, but that's of course a bit of the fun as well. So very nice.
And well, next time out, a very different track in terms of elevation and smoothness of surface. We head to Sebring. How do you fancy your chances there? Can you make it the hat trick? 3 wins on the bounce and also 3 pole positions on the bounce as well.
I hope so. I've driven quite a bit of Sebring before, and it's a very fun track, and it's also challenging. So it's gonna be fun, and I think I don't think, but I hope that I will be able to replicate what I've done in the two first races now. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. Before we let you go, Ole, anyone you want to give a shout out to at all?
Yeah, of course. Thank you to my parents for sponsoring me. Sadly, I left Urano a few days ago, so but yeah. And of course, thank you to Stefan for keeping me company during the race.
Definitely. Congratulations. We'll see you in a week's time at Sebring. That's Ole Steinbraten of Verano Esports in the Mercedes GT AMG. Well, Seb, I understand you're standing by with another one of our drivers. Who's it you've managed to scuttle away for a chat with you?
I've managed to find our second place driver, Stefan Helvik. Stefan, welcome to the commentary box. A great race from yourself. You were leading at one point, managed to out-strategize Mervang in third place. How do you feel after that great race?
No, I didn't really have a lot of practice, and I pretty quickly found out I registered with the wrong car, as one of my teammates told me that. But yeah, I managed to get ahead after a bit of fuel saving and him taking the tear off, and I don't, and that was about 2 seconds. And in the end, there he got a lot of off track, so he had to kind of slow down.
Interesting, like how like the margins that you're going to in the pit stops to sort of take off the windscreen tear off, which if you're an endurance driver you don't even think about, you just do it in the pit stop. So the margins were so fine. Did you even take any fuel during the pit stop?
No, I didn't take anything. I just stopped and had to go because it's a mandatory pit stop.
Wow, I mean, I was calling it in commentary that it was great thinking by yourself to come into the pits and do that, because yeah, it gave you such an advantage when you came back onto the track. So how were you able to fuel save so much fuel even though you were leading Odin Mervang? You were so close in the battle. How did you manage to fuel save and keep ahead of him?
I was basically just clutching into the corners and clutching till third gear. So I geared down to third gear, and then I went off and then I dropped the clutch. So I did not lose any I didn't lose any time on pit saving into the heavy braking corners.
So really interesting strategy from yourself. Of course, this is the second time that you finished second so far in this league. So you're 2 from 2 for finishing in second place. Next we head to Sebring. Do you think you can do one better? Do you think that you can sort of take away Ole Steinbraten's crown of the victor of the series? Do you think that you've got enough pace there?
Yeah, we'll see if I manage because there's such low amount of people racing, and there's not too many of the big dogs racing except us three in the top right now. Most of the people are driving Apex series and stuff like that. So I haven't really put a lot of practice into the series, and neither has Ole, as I was practicing with him for a measly 1 hour before the race. So we'll see if the competition gets bigger. I'll definitely try and edge up my pace, and maybe I can get a P1.
Well, fingers crossed that, yeah, we do see a few more cars on the grid. Always good to see more drivers. And yeah, I mean, Sebring, it's such a good track. And talk us through, what you have to do, what approach do you have to take when you drive around Sebring? How do you have to set the car up?
No, it's a very bumpy track and stuff like that, but you just have to, medium downforce and just have to pray you don't break on the grass, I guess.
Really interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to us in the commentary box. Of course, congratulations on your second place of the season. Before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to at all on the broadcast?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to RacingLab Esports, which is my team, and Ole, who I was practicing with before the race.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and we hope to see you in 1 week's time at Sebring.
Thanks.
And Tim, that was our second place driver. Have you managed to capture anybody else in the paddock at all?
I have indeed, Seb. I've managed to just find Odin Mervang of RPC Esports, who picked up third place in the end. However, won a fight between yourself and Stefan Helvig over second place. It was back and forth pretty much all race long. Well, certainly in the second half of the race. I mean, you spent pretty much the first half of the race just sat behind him. Were you fuel saving?
No, I wasn't really fuel saving. I was just taking it easy. There was no rush, and I knew I didn't have the pace to catch Steinbråten, so I didn't want to fight too early, you know. And they're not working together, but they're talking together, and they start together and whatever. So I know that if I push past Jelvik, or if I get past Jelvik, he will try and fight me in the beginning, and it's a lose-lose situation for us both. So I just kind of played it safe and stayed behind, and hoping he would stick to Steinbråten. But Steinbråten is in a league of his own, so.
Well, it was obviously from once we reached that fable, it was minute 32 was when you made the first move on Stefan. And from that point onwards, it looked like it seemed to be advantage to yourself. But then it all came down to the pit stops where Stefan elected not to take the windscreen tear off. And something so minute, Seb was saying about it during this interview with Stefan that, I mean, during normal racing, the windscreen tear off, you don't even think about it. You just leave it on. It's one of those de facto things you don't worry about. But I mean, crucially, that's been the deciding factor ultimately for yourself, second and third place. I mean, I'm sure it's be something you'll be looking at in the future. But once you came out of the pits, you were stuck behind all sorts of traffic. After that point, did it feel like, well, that was a chance for second place gone for you?
Yeah, kinda, but I knew that Jelvik had some off tracks that he didn't have many to spare, because I was sat behind him counting them, so I knew he was up in the X's. So I was kind of hoping he would get them drive through or something in the end there, but I made some mistakes and got a couple of slowdowns myself. So.
Well, talking about mistakes and off tracks, just how close did you come to the 20x incident point limit where you would have incurred a penalty?
Well, when we started fighting, I had 10 left, and I think after pit I had maybe 6 or something like that left, and I wanted to get by him, so I started using them all. So in the end, I had maybe 4 or 3, I think.
Okay, so you did come close then, but enough room for for error. But fascinating stuff. Before we let you go, Odin, anyone you want to give a shout out to at all?
It's as usual. It's my my team, RPC Esports, and my wife, of course.
Always good to get the approval of your better half, and no, congratulations, commiserations. I'm not too sure how you'll view this one, but either way, it's the place on the podium. But we'll see you in a week's time when we head to Sebring.
Hopefully, yep.
Good to speak to you. That's Odin Merve, who picked up third place today for RPC Esports in the Mercedes GT AMG. Well, 2 Mercedes on the podium. The lone Ferrari nesting the meat in the Mercedes sandwich. But Seb, well, what an intriguing race! So many backs and forth strategies being played out, and I think I've seen a lot. I know yourself have as well during our commentary careers. But to see a position defined over the time it took for a windscreen tear off, that's the first for me, and I get the feeling that's the first for you. I don't think you've come across that one either.
Oh, I certainly haven't. No, outstanding stuff from all drivers. But yeah, the strategic brains at play in that race was just superb. I mean, it wasn't maybe the best for wall-to-wall action, but the strategy was so interesting. It was absolute pleasure to watch and commentate on. In Sebring as well. I mean, it's such a good track as well that we head to in 1 week's time. We're going to see the same sort of, sort of unpredictability of the strategy. I mean, it's Sebring, so I kind of expect it to.
Definitely. It's going to be an interesting one to watch that one play out. Indeed, from one of the most bumpiest circuits in the world of road racing. Of course, that's coming up in a week's time. So a big shout out to one of our many sponsors. You can see him, funnily enough, being used in the background here right now. SDK Gaming, which you can use to broadcast your leagues. We use for all of our productions here. Apex Racing TV. You can also utilize it for a live virtual HUD to iRacing show timing towers, enhanced relative boxes, and of course, crucially, with the Spa 24 coming up this weekend as well, you can utilize it to adjust your cheese strategy on the fly, because it's got the most accurate live timing on iRacing, but the brilliant fuel calculator in there as well, and the ability as well to drop into the live timing software obviously your pit lane times on average, which will show you where you will come out in amongst traffic, could give you the winning edge this weekend. So make sure you check out SDK Gaming for that one. But wow, it's been a crazy race here today in Austria, but we're going to head from Spielberg to Sebring in a week's time. I've been Tim Cox with Porsche Williams. Lewis Ward's been in the production booth, but stay tuned to a short video coming up for you with our very own Jamie Fluke of the Apex Racing team with which car should you choose for the Spa 24-hour.
Hi guys, Jamie Fluke here for Apex Racing Team, and today we're going to take a look at the balanced performance of the GT3 cars for the iRacing Spa 24 this upcoming weekend. Our guys are hard at prep for that, and we're also hard at prep here in the Sim Centre, preparing to open the doors for customers to come in and have a try at our rigs. So without further ado, we're going to get straight into the sim room and take a look at what I think of the balanced performance for the upcoming event. So let's get stuck in.
Don't say anything.
Okay, so I'm now sat in my sim rig, and first thing to get stuck into is looking at the balanced performance that iRacing have provided for the Spa 24. As we can see here, we've got 1% fuel taken out of everything except for the Ferrari and the Ford GT, with weight added to the Mercedes, so 12 kilos for that, and 6 kilos added to the Porsche. Quickly touch on is the Ford GT. Unfortunately, that car is not even really worth considering. It's been sort of neglected over the last few years, so we will not be covering that. In the blue here we've got the Mercedes, and in the red is the BMW, and also I will say this was done before the BOP was announced, so beforehand the Mercedes was probably the clear strongest car available to us. Super strong in the middle of the lap here, so in particular turns 8 through to turn 12 effectively, which is sort of that middle section of the lap, all the sort of lawn sweeping corners. The Mercedes was very, very strong, whereas the BMW sort of came in quite handy in the traction zones, somewhat surprisingly, given the inherent nature of the car, and a little bit sort of in high speed stuff. It's a little bit quicker in a straight line. So moving on now to looking at the Audi R8 Lms Gt3, it does sort of struggle over the course of the lap, especially as we sort of see here in Pouhon. The high-speed stability of the mid-engine cars on this current build just doesn't lend itself to tremendous performance, and so the mid-engine cars do struggle here, whereas turn 1, a traction zone where more of the weight is on the rear of the car, it will suit it a lot more, but over the course of the lap, even with the weight penalty applied to the Mercedes, it will definitely be a stronger option than the Audi as well. So the big weakness of the McLaren is that to get speed out of the car, you need to make the car quite loose, and then the car will get looser as the run goes on. So it becomes very, very unstable quite quickly. It does again have fantastic traction, as we can see here in turn 1, but the middle of the lap, it's all Mercedes ultimately, outside of the final chicane, where again the McLaren does sort of lean into its strengths, where its traction is its strong suit, but there's not enough traction zones around the lap for the McLaren to be a viable option. The Ferrari is not the worst option by any means here. It does lack a little bit in tyre wear, so that's its main weakness. It's really strong over 1 lap typically, but after 5 laps or so, the front tyres seem to really struggle. It does have its strong points though. Again, with it being mid-engined, it will inherently have much better traction. Okay, so moving on now to the Porsche 911 GT3R. Very similar actually in outright speed compared to the Ferrari, about a tenth or so off the Mercedes. And again, similar sort of areas and where it's strong and weak. So naturally, as you would expect with the car, with the engine in the rear, the traction is going to be fantastic. So your turn 1 and final chicane, both very, very strong. The recent patch to improve the rear downforce of this car has helped it massively and does make it a little bit more of a viable option, especially over one lap. So things like tyre wear, I did allude that the Ferrari was generally quite weak on its tyres. The Audi and the Lamborghini will be quite strong, but on their front tyres, more so than their rears. So even though the wear might be better on both of those cars, the rear tyres will wear out more, so you might start to lose balance over the course of a run, especially if you're double stinting tyres. Cars like the BMW and the Mercedes that are front engined tend to keep their balance a little bit better. They might not have the best wear rates, but if the car is still stable to drive over the course of 2 hours, especially if you're not taking any tyres in a pit stop, then that'll be beneficial to you. In terms of overall stability, again, the Audi and the Lamborghini, and to some extent the McLaren as well, are a little bit on the unstable side. For a team of lower I rating, the front engine cars, I find, are going to be your better options for this race. Not only are they both quick, but they're also much more stable to drive for the 600 odd laps or so that you guys will be racing in. The ARA data packs that I've stepped you through here are available to all members of the Apex Racing Academy. The referral link to get 10% off your first sign up with the Apex Racing Academy is in the description below. So for the ART entry, we've decided on what we're driving. I'm sure you can probably figure out that it's either the Mercedes or the BMW. The exact choice will be revealed later on in the week. So let us know in the comments what you're running this weekend, and do you agree or disagree with my assessment of how things are shaping up for this weekend. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.